Now for the track guide. Guys, before starting, if you want to get better with this car, check out the link in the video description. I have created a specific car course for the Ferrari F296 GT3, which I think is gonna help you a lot. Now going into the track guide itself, for turn 1, my reference for braking here will be the middle between 100 and the 50. So slightly around the middle, you want to position the car in such a way that you're almost feeding in the force feedback this grass and gravel part on your left tires. You can also hear it. If you play the Hotlap, you will hear those marbles when the tire go over it. So it's super important to open up as much as you can. Look at this picture right here, because this corner is a lot harder if you don't use all the track. So in the middle of 150, you will start to be applying the brakes. You're definitely looking more at around the 50 board, and while you downshift to third gear, it's super important to focus your vision now on this red curb or orange curb, because you want to get very close to the curb, and even before hitting it, you should be back on throttle. So look, at this point in time, we're applying the throttle. This is before putting the tire on this part of the curb. So you want to keep a tight line. You want to get very, very close, almost brushing this curb, and then smashing the throttle 0-100 in one go. You don't need to modulate around here because you have all this space, and as long as the middle of the car is still at this curb line, it's not gonna be an off track. So it's super important. It's a difficult corner. In terms of the braking itself, you must trail brake up until you hit to the curb, otherwise the car will understeer. So if you look here in the brake trace, you notice that it's not just a spiky brake trace, it's hitting our threshold and then continuing to hold the brakes up until we get to the corner. That is super critical. So let me play it once again for you. First things first, use all the track, brake in the middle of 150, hold the brakes, still trailing, still trailing, still trailing, still holding the brakes. Earlier than hitting the curb, go back on throttle, in third gear, 0-100 on the throttle real quick. And that's how you make the most out of turn 1. Now for the next corner, braking point will be around, once again, in the middle between 150 and 100. You're looking at 150, past 150, like around here, you see almost the middle distance. You're gonna be applying the brakes. Make sure you're using this curb to brake on it. It's super important because this curb is not a 3D curb, at least not yet. So you can exploit it a lot. So putting your left tires all the way to the grass and gravel in second gear, in first gear once you get closer to the curb, and super important, you have to trail brake more than you think here. So if in turn 1 you have to be earlier than the curb on throttle, this is the opposite. You want to be on throttle after the curb. So look, still trailing, still trailing, still trailing, very close to the red sausage curb, almost cutting it, still on the brakes, and now we're back on the throttle after the curb. It's super important to do it in this way, and look at the trail braking shape. Because you need a late apex, because you don't want the car to be here on the left. So we need to position the car in such a way that the car will be closer to this white line on the right side, and the only way you're gonna be able to do it is if you hold the brakes longer to allow the car to properly rotate. Now we're gonna upshift to second gear quite quickly because the traction control will be kicking in. You want to cut this curve like this and keeping flat. You should be arriving here on the right side. If you're not here, it means you just carried a bit less speed, so the car should naturally push towards the right. And now going into the hairpin. For the hairpin, the reference for braking will be close to the beginning of the curb right here. So at this point in time, exactly the beginning of the curb, we're applying the brakes, brake in a straight line, brake hard initially, use this curb to open up while you're braking. Once again, notice that our left tire is almost brushing the dirt and the grass. So open up the corner as much as you can. You will go to first gear, and once you get to the apex, and you should be trail braking all the way to the curb, make sure you're using a lot of steering wheel angle. It's quite funny, but I had a student in a coaching session that couldn't take this corner, not because of the braking, not because of his initial turn in, but just because he did not rotate the steering wheel enough. Like, you really have to cross your arms like this. It's needed here because it's a sharp hairpin. So make sure you're steering a lot. Notice here the amount of steering wheel angle that we use, and then push the throttle. Make sure you're modulating the throttle because you have such a high degree of steering wheel angle that the car will spin the rear tires will lose traction. So until you unwind the steering wheel, you have to just modulate the throttle a bit more. And now we're heading out towards the next corner. This will be flat, nothing special, just make sure you are getting very close to the grass like this, because the only thing that you don't want to do here is have your car on the left side. It's just gonna make the next corner a bit harder than it should. So make sure on the exit of this easy flat out corner, the car stays center of the track, then you're gonna bring it to the right side. You're gonna brake close to the beginning of this concrete on the right side, or the ending of the curb on the right side, this one, the white part. Brake in a straight line, and this is similar with our second braking zone. You want to be trailing more than you think. You have to be later on throttle, so not at the curb. Because look, in second gear, braking, getting super close to this curb, almost touch it, still braking, and here, just after the curb, you're gonna be back on throttle. And this throttle application will help the car rotate, because the rear will start to slide immediately. So you get a bit of rotation from the throttle itself. Just make sure you modulate. Now for this one, to make this one easier, you have to cut the left side curb a lot. Look how much we're cutting, and then when turning, you have to just release the throttle a little. You can't just take it flat, but make sure you're cutting this one as well to the grass with your right tires. And now you should be arriving in this position. It's important to unwind the wheel quite quickly, because you can spin on this curb. If you arrive with too much steering wheel angle, the car will just go sideways. So make sure you're remembering about quick hands here. Now for this right-hander, the reference for braking here is quite tricky to find. So the best reference I can give you, and keep in mind that for this corner, a lot of drivers will just use the approximation of the distance, but I think a good reference will be these cracks in the wall. You see this line around here, this one right here, this one right here. When you start to see them, and you can see them from this distance, like right now you can see them. At high speeds, yes, they are a bit harder to see, but when you're arriving at these cracks, you should be applying the brakes like that. If this doesn't work for you, try to just approximate the distance to the apex. It's not a precise reference, but we don't have too many things to use in this corner. In terms of the entry, you have to use everything. So notice that there's a bit of space to the left of the white line. We should use that. So we should be brushing the wall, and I encourage you to open up this corner as quickly as you can. Don't do it in the last moment. So for example, you're right here, don't wait too much to bring the car on the left, because it's gonna be harder. Just do it quicker before the braking, and then you're gonna brake in third gear, trail brake, still notice that we're still on the brakes, still on the brakes, still on the brakes, up until here, still on the brakes. So trail brake up until you hit the blue and white curb, and you're going towards the green with the right tires, then push the throttle aggressively. You should be arriving here near the gravel, that's perfectly fine. Quickly bring the car towards the right side, because the moment that you bring the car to the right and the steering wheel is almost straight, you're gonna be braking. That's gonna be your reference for braking. So it's before the 50, braking in a straight line initially while still using this curve on the left, just on the right, just a little. And then in second gear, make sure you're not cutting the green here. You just want to get around and apexing around the white line. Maximum just brush the blue and white curve, but don't go more than this. It will just push you wide. And notice that we're still on the brakes. We have a late throttle application. What you can use as a reference for the throttle is this yellow bottle on the right side in your windshield. And make sure you're not using this space right here. This will just slow you down. Ideally, you should use just a tiny bit the blue and white curve. That's it, with your right tires. Now, when you're turning into this corner, make sure you're cutting like this. Make sure you're cutting a lot, because this will just make the next corner easier. So super important, even though it's a flat out corner, to cut it a lot. And then while preparing the next one, it's almost like we're going diagonally towards the braking. So notice that we're braking, we're pushing the car towards the blue and white curb. As in terms of reference for braking, you will use this curb on the right side. The moment that you pass it, you're gonna be applying the brakes. And don't go all the way to the curb. Bring the car close to it, but don't go all the way, because you will travel such a longer distance with the steering wheel that it won't be worth it. It's super easy to make the car understeer around here, and you need that rotation. So even though we're giving away a bit of space, it's still better than just just pushing and just using the steering wheel more. In terms of the braking itself, here you have to hold the brake trace as you take this corner, because you really need that rotation. You have to keep the speed up. After you pass the curb, give it a blimp of throttle. This won't last long, because the moment that you are on this curb like this, you're gonna drop the throttle and once again brake, just barely brushing the brakes, 7% on the brakes, and once the car is pointing, smash the throttle once again while cutting the green curb, go to third gear, use all the track around here, and in short, that's the track guide. That's a lap around Hockenheim. It's a difficult track in the last sector, but it's such a fun track to just compete. And I hope you have a nice week around here. If you want to improve at a quicker pace, once again, check out the Ferrari course and Sim Racing Technique course in the video description. And looking forward to see you in the next one. Bye bye.